1999 through 2005 Lexus IS300 radiator and thermostat replacement. I'm Brian Ussett from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the steps of replacing that. To get started, we need to drain the coolant out. So we're going to open the radiator cap. Then we're going to lift the vehicle up. So if you're doing this at home, you're going to use floor jacks and jack stands and lift the front of the vehicle up. We need to remove the lower shield to gain access to the lower hose and the radiator petcock. So we're going to remove the shield. So what you're going to do is just going to follow the perimeter and take the bolts out around the perimeter and lower the shield off. The first step after we got the shield off is to remove the transmission cooler lines. So to prevent all the transmission fluid from running out of the hoses, I put some hose clamps on it. If you don't have these, you can put bolts or something on the end of the hoses to prevent the fluid from running out once you take those off. So after that, then you can go ahead and loosen up the petcock here and start draining your coolant. You also obviously want to have a bucket to catch the fluid. So go ahead and pop those two hoses off. After you get those hoses off, on the right hand side, you're going to pull the electrical connector for the temp sensor off and then loosen the hose clamp for the lower hose and take the lower hose off. Now that you got the hoses off, we're going to lower the vehicle back down or go back up top. And we're going to remove this air snorkel here. So you're going to remove the 10mm bolt here. And then you're going to lift the air snorkel off and set aside. Then after that, we're going to remove the air box. So you're going to loosen the hose clamp, unplug the mass airflow sensor, remove the 10mm bolt here, and then down here, there's going to be another 10mm bolt. You're going to remove all three of those. Then on the side of the air box, there's a little wire loom holder, so you're going to pop that out. And after that, we need to unplug the electrical sensor for the evap purge valve and the hose underneath, so you're going to pull the hose off. Once you got the purge valve disconnected and all the lines pulled off, then you can just lift the box straight up and out like this and just set aside for now. Next, we're going to remove the upper radiator hose, so you're going to loosen the clamps and pull off. Now we need to unplug the cooling fans here, so you're going to push in the tab and pull off. Push the tab here in and pull off. And then we're going to pull off this little vent tube here. So you're going to pull this off and set it aside. Now that we got the cooling fans disconnected, the next step is we're going to remove the bracket here. So you'll remove the 10mm bolt, and then on the passenger side, you'll remove the 10mm bolt and the bracket and set them both aside. Also, they're just below the wire loom for the cooling fan is going to have a little catch down here. You will need to detach it from there. Now you can just grab the radiator and lift straight up and pull the radiator and fans out as one assembly. So in just a second, we're going to transfer the fan from off the old radiator onto the new radiator. But before we do that, I'm going to tackle the thermostat. So we're going to take the lower hose here, and if you follow it around, just below the exhaust right here is the thermostat housing. So we're going to remove the 10mm bolt here, and just below, right on the back side here, is another 10mm bolt we're going to remove, and we're going to pull the housing off, and then we'll just pull the hose and housing out through here as one piece. To get those bolts off, I'm just going to use a flex head ratchet with a short extension and a deep socket, and just kind of just reach around the back. And I'll do the bottom one first, and I'll crack the little nut free, and then once I get it crack free, I'll just spin it off. Then to get to the top one, we're going to use my favorite tool. One of my favorite tools is these mountain wrenches. They're about 18 inches long, and they're flex head ratcheting wrenches. They make jobs like this really easy. I'll leave a link in the description for these wrenches. I recommend you check them out. These will save you a lot of time and effort. So once you get the top bolt cracked free, you can spin the nut off. And then once the nut's off, then you can pull the housing and wiggle the housing out. Then you can carefully pull the housing and hose out through the side here, just like this. Now that we got the thermostat out, if you take a look at it, it has a little vent at the top here. So when we put this back together, we want to make sure that our new thermostat, the vent is pointing upwards to the same way this one is. And so I'm going to link up in the description of the video all the parts for the thermostat, the radiator, the coolant, and all the tools that I use. So if you guys need to pick up any of this stuff, you can find that there in the description. So we're going to pop this thermostat out of this housing here, and then we'll install the new one with the grommet into the housing. After we get it installed, then we're just going to rotate it back around into position, put it over the studs, and start the two 10mm nuts and tighten those up. This is the part numbers for the replacement radiator that will be linked up in the description. Now we're going to take the coolant temp sensor out of the old radiator and transfer it over to the new radiator. So you'll spin that out and then tighten it up. And then we're going to remove the cooling fan bolts around the perimeter and remove the cooling fan and transfer it over to the new radiator and then rebolt it up onto the new radiator. So when you go to install the temp sensor, you don't want to over tighten it, so you'll just thread it into it bottoms out and then about a quarter turn more and make sure it's good and snug, and that's about all you need to do. So one of the tools I use to make jobs like this much faster is this Milwaukee M18 fuel. It makes removing little fasteners like this a breeze, and it has a variable trigger, so you don't overpower the something like this and break something, so you can ease the trigger on and remove even the finest little nuts and bolts with it. So one of the things I like to do in my videos is demonstrate tools and products that make my life easier. And this Milwaukee 3/8 Impact Gun is definitely one of those tools that makes my life easier. I'll leave a link for it in the description of the video. Now, before we install the radiator, we're going to make sure that the rubber grommet that sometimes sticks on the bottom of the radiator when you pull them out, so that it'll be right here on these little nipples here. So if they stick, you need to take the grommet here and put it back into the frame of the car. So sometimes it'll, like I said, it'll stick on the bottom of the old radiator. So if it does, you want to take it off and put it back into the bottom of the frame here. And then after that, we're going to lift the radiator straight up and lower it down into position. And make sure that those little nipples on the bottom mount into the little rubber grommets. Once they're seated in there, then you can put the brackets back on. So you'll put the bracket here on the driver's side, and then the same thing on the passenger side, and you'll put the two 10mm bolts up and tighten them up. After that, you can plug the cooling fans back in. And once you plug them in, make sure that you hear the little click, the little wire loom below. You can re-secure it here. And then we're going to put the little elbow vent here back on. So you'll just put it back into position. Now that that's all re-secure, you can put the upper hose back on and tighten the clamps. Then we'll reassemble the air box by lowering it down into position and starting the 3 mounting screws. And then plugging in the air snorkel. So once you got the box back down in position and bolt it back up, you're going to make sure the mass air is plugged in and the hose clamp is re-secure. Then the vent purge line here, we're going to reattach that here and then plug in the electrical connector. After that's all secure, we're going to put the air snorkel back in, so you position it in place and then put the 10mm bolt on. After that, we're going to lift the vehicle back up and reinstall the transmission cooler lines, put the hose clamps on, remove your clamps, make sure the new petcock is tight. Then we'll install the lower radiator hose and tighten the clamp up, and then we'll plug in the electrical connector for the cooling fan. After that's installed, you can lift the shield back into position and re-bolt it back up. Now with the vehicle back down on the ground, we're ready to fill it up with Toyota approved 50/50 mixed coolant. So we're going to fill the radiator up, and also the overflow bottle. There's a full line right below here. You want to fill it up until it's at the full line with 50/50 mixed Toyota approved coolant. After that, we're going to start the vehicle up and run the vehicle until the cooling fans run and the thermostat opens up. So you're going to run the car for about 10 or 15 minutes before the thermostat opens up and the cooling fans will come on and run. You also want to make sure that there's no AC or heaters on. You want all that turned off while you're doing this. One of the ways I like to check the thermostat is to take a temperature reading with my infrared temperature gun here. And as you'll take a reading, and when you first start it, and it'll be pretty cool, and then as it opens up, you'll see a drastic jump in the temperature on the infrared gun. And that's one way of telling how the thermostat is open. Another way is you could actually, as you first start it up, reach down here and feel the upper or the lower hose, and you'll feel how cool it is. And as the thermostat opens, it'll get drastically warmer. And then the coolant level will most likely drop, and you may have to top it off. And like I said, you want to make sure that overflow bottle is all topped off. Also, while the engine's running, you may want to double check your transmission fluid level. You probably will lose a couple ounces, so you may have to add a little bit of transmission fluid. So I'll link up all the parts and tools that I used in this video in the description. That way, if you guys need to pick up any of those, you can find those there. And that'll complete the job of replacing the radiator and thermostat on a 1999 through 2005 Lexus IS 300. I'm Brian Essett from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this, and I'd like to thank you again for watching.